Christian, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi there. Wanted to ask you a couple of questions about what you see for the rest of this year in terms of working from home or working from anywhere. And I'd like to know how the Vodia Cloud PBX makes that possible.
Yeah, so I think 2021 will be, for us at least, the year where we have to make work from home seriously happening. I mean, it's definitely triggered by the pandemic, but it's actually not only a pandemic. I mean, we had that, we were preaching it for a long time anyway, but I think it became really clear that this is something that's going to happen over the next couple of years anyway. I think what is really has become clear is that there's always a certain percentage of the staff, and even if it's only one guy, who wants to work from home. And I can understand that IT administrators are hesitant to do any migration progress, but I think that that's now really becoming something that cannot be postponed anymore. I think the urgency to make the work from home happening for the telephone system is now really becoming a top priority everywhere.
Now, my feeling is that people have, in terms of small businesses, medium to large enterprises even, everybody's got their video conferencing organized, everybody's got their email organized, etc. But I think maybe the phone system is sort of the last mile for most organizations.
Right. So the problem is the telephone number. That's one of the key problems here, because people right now give their private cell phone numbers to the outside world, essentially to customers that they don't really know, which is a huge problem for privacy. Because, well, if I give my private cell phone number to somebody, to strangers essentially, right? I mean, I shouldn't be surprised if they call me on Saturday morning at 5 a.m. or p.m. So that's something I don't want. And as an employer, I'll also be worried, because now my customers' contacts are on the private cell phones of my employees, right? So that's a total no-go. I think it's totally necessary that people are using a company phone number for company interactions, right? So that means that the employees are making the calls over a company phone number. That means if employees should leave, then they don't take the contacts with them. They don't take those numbers with them. It stays with the company. But it also has another huge advantage. It's the time, because if you're using a phone system, you can control at what time people are working and what not. In other words, you can say working times are, let's say, 9 to 5. And then outside of those hours, people are not getting calls for the company anymore. That means they can use their cell phones for their private stuff, but on that device, they don't get any calls from the company anymore. And if they're working from a PC app, then they can just close the app anyway. And they really have like an explicit control about the time when they're being online and available and whatnot. And we see that this is a huge success. This is a huge reason for people to prefer a cloud PBX compared to pretty much anything else out there right now. I think that's
so. Sorry to interrupt. So it makes it as
yeah.
if my cell phone becomes my desk extension.
Exactly. So I mean, the cell phone has killed so many other appliances, like CD players and flashlight, and I don't know what. So many things have moved into the cell phone, and people are wondering, like, why did my desktop phone, my VoIP phone for my company, not move into my telephone? I mean, it's after all, it's still a phone, right? So it's kind of unbelievable that this didn't happen so far. But I think the pandemic is finally the final step that makes it happening. So we are essentially helping making that happening by offering our app. So there's one more app, which is the business telephone on your smartphone. And I think the difference to the other social things, WhatsApp and Signal, I don't know what, I think the big difference is that we have a function that says this is the working hour and this is not the working hour. And also, by the way, we're not storing the data on the device, we're storing the data on the cloud, and not on the private device, we're storing it on the company database. That means when employees are coming and going, that data stays in the company, is not staying on a device. I think that's a big difference to many other soft phones that you see out there for more or less private use, because this is really about businesses.
right, let's say my organization has become completely dependent on Microsoft Teams. Can that be accommodated by the PBX?
Yeah, so we integrate with Teams. So Teams has a thing called the session border controller, and we are that session border controller. So you can kind of connect Teams with our PBX, and you can do that for stuff that just terminating calls into the PSTN over a regular SIP trunk. But we can also offer additional functions that you don't see by these by these SBCs. For example, we can do stuff like overhead paging or talking to analog devices, ATAs. I mean, we have a very large range of devices that they can use, or sometimes people don't even want to have a Teams extension. So employees that make occasional phone calls don't need a full-blown Teams extension, so they can just use a regular PBX extension, and we can do that in parallel. And sometimes even stuff like setting up an auto attendant or a small ACD is much easier in a Vodia PBX than in Teams. So that's also where our solution can really help out with Teams.
My last question is sort of a two-part question, in that, let's say my organization, because of the pandemic and people are at home with their kids and with their spouses, et cetera, and so forth, people are trying to maintain a work-life balance and make sure that they're not working all night, taking calls at the crack of dawn, et cetera, and so forth. That's the first part of the question. Can I find a way to sort of organize how everybody's receiving calls, create sort of opening a business and closing a business hours, so that those calls, if they're outside of those hours, will go to voicemail? And also, let's say between now and Christmas, I sort of have an ebb and flow of team members who, some people come back to the office and then decide it's not for them. Some people decide that they want to stay at the office. Some people want to alternate their days back and forth. Can this also be accommodated?
Yeah, I mean, so we call it the solution for work from home, work from everywhere, even work from the office. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are as long as you have a good internet connectivity. I mean, at home, you usually have Wi-Fi. In the office, you also have Wi-Fi. So you can literally take exactly the same device, same setup into the office. And actually, we are doing that for many months now. So it doesn't matter where I am. I'm still using the same device from wherever I am, or on the road, right, in the car. So that is totally the thing of having the service running in the cloud, that we can access that from anywhere. And if I'm on the road, I have at least LTE. So 5G maybe make it one day even better, but LTE is more than enough already for making a decent phone call. So we have already achieved that many months and moons ago. So the other thing is, I got a call that was like an aha moment. That must have been more than 10 years ago at 3 a.m. in the morning. And that's when I realized we have to do something to control a bit the time when people are actually calling you for the company, right? I mean, if somebody called me at 3 a.m. in the morning for a private reason, that's a different story. But if somebody called me from the company at 3 a.m. in the morning, then that is something that we can avoid and we should avoid. And I think it's very important for user acceptance, because I think when employees are installing the app on their device, they should have a benefit from it. And the benefit must be that they're not being disturbed outside of working hours. And I think that can only be done by having a time-based control on the telephone system. And that's why we have added a long time ago, to make sure that we kind of enforcing those kind of working hours. I mean, people can still, for example, outbound calls, you can do it anytime, right? Because you initiate that call. But the inbound calls, we can set a limitation saying we're doing it only during those and those hours. And that, I think, is the key for having people accept that as a solution for them from work from anywhere. Because work from anywhere does not mean work anytime, right? That's a huge difference.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect of it.
So I guess to finish up, if somebody is finally decided, now that we're just over a year into the pandemic, in the States at least, if you're going to make the digital transformation for your organization, people probably put the phone last. And I'm assuming you would say start with your phone and everything else will follow.
Yeah, okay. So migration is always a huge problem in the IT world, right? So people hate to do migrations. It's a lot of work. And I think what companies can do is actually just start with a second PBX, second phone system. So they can just keep whatever they have right now, don't even touch it, don't even look at it, and just set up a second system in the cloud just for the people who work from home. So they can go ahead, maybe they have the separate phone number, or you redirect one of the extensions into the cloud PBX, what I call forwarding, which is very easy on every PBX, so that you essentially have like a dual PBX systems running at the same time. And we're very convinced that over a couple of months, people will start using it more and more people actually say, oh, can I also have an extension on that cloud PBX? So that eventually the whole organization smoothly migrated to the cloud, instead of having this kind of IT project where you're supposed to turn off one system and then move to another system over one night or so, which is always very, very difficult. You can have like a smooth migration essentially over months. And I think that's what people prefer a lot more. And I mean, if they don't like it, if they say, oh, no, we like our old phone system more, you know what, then they can turn off the cloud again. So there's no risk. There's not a one-way street. So people are totally flexible with what works best for them. But I'm very convinced that most people actually will say they're turning, or they even forget about that old PBX. They forget that they had that old one, and they just move everybody to the cloud, right?
All right, then. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem. You have a good one. Yep.
You too.
Later.